Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. In this video, I'm going to talk about a topic which is unknown about migrations, right? And this topic is around Microsoft 365 migration specially, along with other topics or other strategies. So I'm going to decode all those different strategies, how we can go ahead and migrate from different scenarios or different workloads to Microsoft 365 basically, right? So I'm going to take all those strategies and what are the ways or how or which strategy we should adopt, right? That's also very important because if we are just trying to migrate something from maybe another tenant to another tenant, or maybe from on premises to the cloud, or from be it IMAP as well, right? And we also need to know and dig dive into each of those areas, whether what is possible to migrate, what is not possible, right? And are there any roadblocks? If yes, then how we should tackle that, and which strategy is going to be the one that is going to really help us, right? So that's what I'm going to take and walk you through, right? So let's jump on to the presentation, and this is going to be pretty straightforward and easy to understand as well, right? Now you might have seen, and even if you have worked on migrations, right, you are aware about it, right? But still, the one area which is going to be always be in blank, which is a strategy, right? How you are going to adopt the strategy, how that strategy is going to be the right fit for your requirement, your solution, and how you are going to understand it, right? Before doing any actual technical work or keyboard work that you are going to do as an engineer or SME or anyone, right? So you must know what strategy we are going to employ, right? How that strategy is going to help us to do the migration, or what strategy we should do really, right? So let's jump on and I'll show you, and I'll walk you through so that you can understand better. All right, let me put this on presentation mode and I'll share my screen quickly here, and then we can take it further. Just a minute here. All right, it's coming up. All right. So here you can see what I'm trying to decode in this one is the strategies for Microsoft 365 migration basically. So you can see that starting from cutover, staged, hybrid, IMAP, tenant to tenant by using third-party tools, right? So I'm going to talk a bit about third-party tools as well, right? And let's start with, so why Microsoft 365 migration? So that's going to be the first question, right? Because if you are using any legacy system, be it hybrid infrastructure you have, including on-premises Exchange, along with other workloads as well, and you wanted to migrate to the cloud, or do you really need to migrate or what, right? Definitely, there are pros and cons to it, but it is depending on the organization to organizations. Also, they need to do their assessment, what they wanted to do in the future, right? Next 5, 10 years, and whether they wanted to stay back here in the hybrid environment or into the fully on-premises setup, right? Because definitely, as I said, into the on-premises environment, there is a lot of control as long with a lot of overhead of management, including IT infrastructure, security, networking, and all of that stuff is also there. But when it comes to the cloud, definitely we get the complete g- stability along with the security as well. But still, if you ask or if you look at the control wise, definitely there would be some of the delay, not delay definitely, but there would be not the underlying infrastructure control, because it's a shared responsibility model that Microsoft is following when you are moving to the cloud, right? So you get to manage your data, identities, and access levels on applications and everything, but you don't really get control to manage the servers and underlying infrastructure at all, right? So that's how it is going to be. Now, doing all of that assessment, understanding all of the capabilities, whether we have complete control, visibility, and everything together, and are we really need to migrate, or are we ready for the migration? If yes, then definitely we can go ahead and start the pilot migrations and exploring the different options, including migration strategies that I'm going to talk about, right? So you can understand, move from legacy to cloud, gain security, scalability, collaboration for different workloads, including Teams, OneDrive, SharePoint, and of course Exchange as well, which is Exchange Online in the cloud. And it's also going to reduce IT overhead and increase the flexibility when it comes to managing the workloads and everything together, right? So that's how it is going to be available and provided as well. Now let's talk about some of the migration strategies and a bit about overview, right? So there are different approaches over there, and depending on all of that, just a minute here. All right. All right. So the different strategies that I was talking about are the approaches that we are going to take, including or depending on organization size, the timelines, and complexity of the organization requirement, along with infrastructure that they are in or they have, basically, right? And it is also something that no one size fits all the migration strategies. For example, if you are going to adopt tenant to tenant migration or cutover migration, or maybe uh, any other migration strategy that you wanted to match, right? So that's not going to fit for your requirements. So you need to understand that as well and map it you with your current infrastructure or current requirement of the organization, right? So that's how it is going to be possible to take it ahead. Now, the first strategy is cutover migration, which is also called as Big Bang, right? Now you can see I have mentioned few pros and cons and what is it best for, right? So if you have to call it as a definition or definition wise, move it all at one go, right? That means you have to do everything in one go and there is should not be anything left behind so that you will not come back and do, and maybe that's not the right approach, right? So if I have to migrate everything in a day or within few hours, this is going to be the right strategy because we don't rely or we don't want to keep anything behind. Also, we cannot afford to stay or keep something in the behind and maybe come back and start doing migration, right? So cutover migration is something which is best for small organizations less than 150 mailboxes, if I have to call it that way, right? And which is going to be quick and simple. There is a bit of downtime definitely because during that migration period, there would be some of the scenarios or situations of downtime, right? And that is why we need to take that downtime for a while at least. A simple analogy or to understand better, moving to the new house overnight, something like that, right? For example, I'm moving from one location to another. I'll have to wrap up from one location and then move it to the another locations directly, right? Without doing much into the background, right? So that's how it is going to be. So this is the Big Bang, which is also cut over migration. The next is staged migration, which is a phased approach or phased trip, right? We can call it as move mailboxes in batches, not only mailboxes, but any data or any workload that we wanted to migrate, we can do that in a batches or phased wise. Let's say we have 2000 or more than maybe 500 mailboxes. What we will do is we'll plan that batches. Let's say we will call 100 mailboxes in one batch, then we will migrate that each batch one by one, because we also wanted to make sure people are able to work, they are able to use their mailboxes and systems, everything, and they are going to be, or the system and business itself is not limiting or blocking the user's productivity, right? So that is going to be the staged migration. Now, this staged migration strategy is applicable on many different scenarios, or many different organizations are adopting it, and they're doing it when there is a particular capacity, particular uh, lot of batches, not only batches wise, but if we have to calculate on a org wide initiatives or org wide workloads. For example, SharePoint has data in terabytes, right? Exchange has more than 2000 mailboxes, right? Teams has more than 2000 identities, right? Similarly, on the OneDrives, and it has also a lot of data along with those identities, right? In that case, we cannot do the big bang approach. We can do that definitely, but it's going to be very risky and it's going to take a lot of time to migrate everything in a one go, right? And even there are some limitations from migration point of view when we are trying to migrate some data, identities and everything, then definitely it's going to take a lot of time and it's going to hit the API thresholds, right? So that is going to break the migration flows, right? So here you can see it is better and best for mid-sized organizations between 150 to 2000 if we have to calculate that way. And you can see the pros and cons. Controlled batches, cons is limited to older versions. And a simple analogy, moving house in multiple trips, in multiple batches, basically, right? So this is a straightforward one to understand. The next is hybrid migration, which is enterprise grade migration that we do see, or many organizations are adopting because they do have on-premises plus Microsoft 365, or they do have hybrid environment, basically, right? So which is going to be with coexistence between on-premises Exchange plus M365, right? Which is best for enterprise organizations, and pros and cons with the complex setup when it comes to the hybrid and on-premises, but pros, seamless user experience, because we don't want people to be experiencing any issues or any problems when they are accessing and using business systems, right? So analogy wise, living in two houses before moving fully, right? That means we are living in two places. One is here and another place is somewhere else, right? And still we are using it until unless we are not moved from our first or primary house, basically. So this is going to be enterprise grade hybrid migration strategy, right? Many companies or businesses are adopting this one because they do have a bigger environments, bigger infrastructure, and they cannot afford to be taking the downtime or something like that. Instead, they would put it into a focused and kind of area or kind of phased wise approach. The next is IMAP migration, which is for email only, right? Definitely, this is supporting for Gmail and other clients or other service providers, including Lotus Notes, Zimbra, right? Which is IMAP protocol to move only emails, but it really does not do the calendar and contacts, right? So that's the cons here, and this works for anywhere basically. So in simple terms, or use analogy wise, moving only your particular workload, something like books, and you can leave behind the furnitures or tables that you are using basically. So to understand it better that way. The next is tenant to tenant migration, right? So this is something which is from one tenant to another tenant, and what are the scenarios why we are doing tenant to tenant migration, right? So first approach could be M&A, which is merger and acquisition. Second could be rebranding of the organization from one organization to another, and they are consolidating their systems and tenants and basically the whole company. right? So that way, tenant to tenant migrations are happening, right? Even if the company is moving from their parent organization and they are going to from or separate out from their parent organizations to a separate entity, basically. So they would also do the migration from tenant to tenant. So that's also called as divestitures, right? And you can see the pros and cons there too. Full M365 migration, along with there is going to be bit complex downtime challenges, right? Because definitely when we are migrating data, a lot of data, identities and applications and everything, we have to take some of the downtimes, right? So in simple terms and or analogy, combining two families into one house, right? So that's how it is going to be when it comes to tenant to tenant migration with M&A and rebranding. But in the divestitures, it's going to be opposite to that one, right? So that's how it is going to be. And the next is about the third party tools for migrations. Basically, there are different tools available. You can see including BitTitan, Quest On Demand, ShareGate, and I have used them. I worked on them, right? And that is why I mentioned them, how those are useful and those are working effectively, right? Definitely, there would be differences between each of these tools with some of the feature sets and the capacities and capabilities that they are providing. But definitely, those are very helpful in scenarios, right? Those are best for complex along with large scale migrations as well. And the pros and cons wise, flexible support on Teams and OneDrives along with Exchange as well. So each tool is unique and different in nature along with their services and capabilities and feature wise, right? So definitely you can go ahead and try and test if you have or whenever you are going to plan any migration. And cons wise, costs extra. So cost extra means it depends on what type of migration you are going to do, what type of license you are going to use, right? That way it's going to be the costing, right? And a simple analogy why is hiring professional moving company for any of the capacities. For example, you are moving from one location from one house to another, definitely you would hire for some other third party companies to move your stuff, right? And there's a quick comparison for all the different strategies and tool wise, right? So Cutover for small, simple, and quick, but a bit of downtime, definitely. Stage one is going to be mid-sized and phased-wise approach, along with the legacy-only approach. And hybrid is going to be large or seamless, along with, and it's going to be a complex as well in scenarios, right? Then IMAP, which is going to be any IMAP solution for email-only clients. That's not going to support for any other workloads. Tenant to tenant for M&A complex environments, right? Along with the rebranding and divestitures. And then lastly, third party tools, which are flexible and costly as well on different scenarios, right? Basis on the needs and requirement. So in the decision framework, you can see is for small, medium, large organizations and the other scenarios, including M&A, rebranding and divestitures, right? So from small, it is going to be the cutover, and that is moreover been considered and been used for different organizations because small organizations really don't have complex environments, right? So they would be either using email service and along with other workloads, and that should be easy to migrate in few hours. But for medium large, is going to be the staged along with the IMAP, and for large ones, it's the hybrid one, right? And for tenant to tenant, for M&A complex scenarios along with rebranding and divestitures, definitely there would be third-party tools used, right? Along with that, it is going to be the complex environment to plan it accordingly, and then classifying the data for migrations and everything together. And there are some of the best practices that I have adopted here, including inventory and assess environments, how you are going to migrate, what is there in the scope for migration, identify all those workloads, right? Communicate across the organizations, across the user base, and then you can start with the pilot migrations across, and then before rolling it out, right? So including backup and recovery plan that is also needed when it is on the different organization level. Now, backup and recovery is something when there is an organization which is a complex environment and they do have a lot of data. For example, a financial organization, they do have a lot of organization and they're moving out of their parent organizations and setting up a separate entity altogether, right? In that way, definitely that organization would have backup and a recovery plan already built in, and they might have everything set up over there, right? And in that way, definitely that's going to be also a part of this. But upon migration, there would also be an organization or that entity would be planning and requiring for backup and recovery plans or services, right? So they would opt for that as well. So that's depending on organization needs and requirements basically, but that's also something which is very important when it is, or in these days at least, right? Because uh, we are seeing a lot of threats and bad actors are doing a lot of unwanted things, right? By using AI and all of that stuff, right? And lastly, training users post migrations, how they should access their data, how they should use it effectively, right? What are the best practices, how they should keep their identities and data and safe and secure, right? So that's how it is going to be with the best practices. There is a key takeaways, right? So what are the key takeaways here? I have mentioned with multiple strategies exist depending on size and complexity for each organization, basically. And analogies make teaching. That's something you are going to employ for the whole organization, including end users and different teams that they are going to work along with, right? And the last one, which is a careful planning avoids disruption, right? So this is very important to do the planning appropriately and take the steps ahead. Otherwise, this migration, if in the case of mid-sized as well as the larger enterprise organizations, that's very important. But right, and if it is going to be the kind of big bang activity or big bang situation, which is a cutover, of course, right? We are not going to look back and see, okay, do we really need to migrate everything, or we just need to migrate amount of data or amount of workloads, right? And remaining should be kept behind, and that's not really not needed. So in that case, definitely there is a need to plan and take it further. And so Q&A. So if you have any questions, anything about migrations and wanted to know and learn about any of the migration strategies, definitely you can reach out in the comment section. You can put your questions, thoughts, any other approaches that you've followed and have seen any experiences and you wanted to share something around it. Do definitely share it, and that is going to help people to learn and explore and move it ahead, right? So, yep, that is what I wanted to talk you and talk about this different strategies for M365 migration and different approaches, how you can go ahead and take each of those based on organization needs, requirements, and how they are going to plan it accordingly. So, yep, that's all. And thanks for watching. Bye for now. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel as well, and share it with your friends and people around you. So, yeah, that's all. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.